So let's see what it's like working with potential in a life. Let's take a young individual life that is already full of ingredients that make up essentially its personality or its own distinctive personal qualities, attributes, traits, maybe natural abilities and strengths. And with this particular individual life, of course, has all the ingredients it needs for what it can potentially become. So we're going to give it this potential. Just out of interest, this young life, according to projections, will be joined by about 140 million new young lives every year over the coming decades. So each of these lives follows, let's just say, a general life cycle that means it will begin at birth. It will travel through various phases like childhood, adolescence, what psychologists call emerging adulthood. Then, of course, we have adult life before departure at death. Now, this life cycle already gives us one of life's slightly uncomfortable truths, and that is you cannot make this time go faster or slower. You have to make the most out of what it is that you have. This young life does not live in isolation. It is surrounded by a wonderful, amazing world that is full of all of the things that are connected to its potential life. And that is, it includes the people, places, things, the potential experiences that it can have, and even various elements that will play a role, of course. We'll take culture in this case, and so on. And all of these things in this young life are connected in some way to its potential. Now, how does life work? Well, we're not reinventing this one either. It is essentially life being B, C, and D. We know that life begins with birth and essentially ends with death. So what is it in the middle that is going to create the content of our life? Well, many will already know that what we're talking about here are the choices that are made or that we make. So this content is connected to the choices that are made to build very specific connections between the individual life and the world around it. How's this going to take place, especially when for a part of this life it is young, not going to be making a lot of these choices and connections itself? Very simple. As this young life grows up, these connections are simply made for it. The world is already very sure about what this young life will need, should need, is expected to need, and should be doing, and therefore the connections are going to be made for this young life. Example being that when the world decides that it's time to experience school, then the connection will be made to this young life so that they experience school. Should it be that this young life has all sorts of opportunities, it could also be that connections are made so that there are experiences of creative things, physical things, and social interaction to others. That's one approach, but of course, the other is also possible, and that is we recognize in this young potential that there are certain traits and qualities, natural abilities or strengths that we think are very interesting to explore. So we start to choose experiences out in the world that are very strongly connected to this young potential so that we can see what comes of it. Very often, as this young individual is able to understand, things are explained. Why we do something, why a particular connection is important. Also, how to think, how to feel about many of the things out here. Thereby, what we're essentially shaping in this particular case are the characters of these young individuals. Now, the characters, of course, are a slightly different phenomenon because the personality and these distinctive traits are all part of what the individual already is. Whereas what we see here is that the character is being shaped through the experiences, through the choices and the connections that are being made. Next comes the phase of slowly moving towards making these connections themselves. Very often there are already questions, what comes next? What am I supposed to do? Now, it's not like this guidance just disappears. Very often it might hang on just a little bit longer or too long in some cases, but as was already modeled for them, these young people know that what they need to be doing is building connections out to the world. Now, the world is pretty clear about what it expects of you and what you should be doing and when is the right time for what. And so these sorts of connections tend to be more easily built and a regular part of this individual's life. On the other hand, they are also perhaps more free than before when they see they have a certain talent, skill, not skill potentially because skill is something that they can build, but they have a natural talent or trait or quality that they could bring into a situation and experience more, perhaps even one that they already experienced earlier and found that they were very good at, and they can choose the experience that they want out in the world that is very particular to them, thereby also having a hand in testing out and shaping their own character. We then end up with a very interesting scenario. At this point in time, there often appears a particular dynamic, or in some cases, we could potentially call it a creative tension, when there's a bit of push and pull between the individual or the core, and we're going to allow them this, so we will put down here that the other end of this spectrum is their core potential. So there is push and pull between this individual personality based on its own potential and the world out here with the questions, how is my life supposed to be shaped or formed? Is it only going to be done on the basis of what I am told to do and who I am told to be? Or do I actually get to make more and more decisions about what I want and who I want to be, thereby being more true to myself? A quote that is often used shows the nature of the dilemma a little bit when it is said, I'm not who I think I am, and I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Now, I know it's a little bit of a mind twister, but it shows that there is a little bit of confusion between how I'm thinking and behaving and who you expect to see and whether I'm going to match that. Let me change that quote a little bit just to make it, let's say, more approachable. I'm not quite who I think I am, and I'm not quite who you think I am, but I'm still very often who I think you think I am. Thereby, it highlights that we sometimes feel that it is simply the world dictating everything about what we are supposed to choose and connect to. There comes that point very often in a young person's life as they're looking towards their futures and trying to decide how to create everything moving forward based on what has already happened in their life, that they see that very often much of what is in their life has been predetermined for them. Everything around them has guided them towards the choices and the connections they should make. And this simply explained as part of who they should be. And that this most certainly fits to the core of their individuality and their own potential. Not unusual is, however, that they feel that this is a little out of sync, because intuitively they know that I am who I am and I feel it. I understand that I have certain individual qualities about me that I want to take a look at and see what I can do with them. And by doing so, define who I want to be and how I want to feel and think about things in the world, and ultimately make the choices and the connections that build the content of my life. So this scenario ultimately all begins with the potential that we have right at the beginning, which slowly gets a little clouded over simply because of the fact that we were not yet ready to make our own choices and decisions. But there comes that point in time when you can decide in which direction you want to approach creating the content of your life.